This presentation highlights content from Meg's History of Graphic Design, Chapter 15. In this segment, we will extend our discussion of Russian constructivist design and look at the work of Alexander Rodchenko, the Stenberg brothers, and Gustav Clustis. From 1917 to 1921, the Russian government tolerated the advancement of avant-garde art. In 1922, they turned hostile, accused advanced artists of capitalist cosmopolitanism, and advocated social realistic painting. Malevich and others drifted into poverty and obscurity. Other artists ended up in the Gulag. The artists who had shifted to the constructivist ideals and graphic design were in sync with the new communist regime, though that too would not last. Graphic artists including Alexander Rodchenko, the Stenberg brothers, and Gustav Clustis careers thrived under the communist philosophy of the 1920s. Alexander Rodchenko was an ardent communist and lead member of the Russian constructivist movement. He brought an inventive spirit and willingness to experiment to typography, montage, and photography. In 1921, Rodchenko abandoned painting in favor of graphic design. In 1923, Rodchenko began to design a magazine for all fields of the creative arts entitled Novy Lev, or Left Front of the Arts. This cover for Novy Lev No. 1 was printed in 1923. The logo is printed in tight registration with the top half of the letterforms red and the bottom half black. This was not an easy task given the printing equipment that they had at the time in Russia. Rodchenko's design style for Novy Lev was based on strong horizontal and vertical forms placed in machine-rhythm relationships. Overprinting, kiss registration, and photo montage were regular elements in his work. Rodchenko delighted in using contrasting, bold, blocky type and hard-edged shapes against the softer forms and edges of photomontage. In this early photomontage, the montage is actually crossed out, negating the old order. The young children that appear just above the center of the X symbolize the new society. Alexander Rodchenko's cover for Novy Lev No. 3. A biplane bearing the magazine logo drops a fountain pen bomb at a gorilla representing the traditional arts of the former Tsarist regime. Beginning in 1924, Alexander Rodchenko was commissioned to design a series of 10 covers for the Jim Dollar Messman books. Consistency throughout the series is achieved through a standardization of geometric formats. Montage illustrations accompany each story, and they were all printed in black and a second color. Only the title, number, and photo montage illustration change, making each unique yet clearly part of the series. Georgy and Vladimir Stenberg were talented Russian brothers who collaborated on theatrical designs and film posters during the 1920s and 30s. Mindful of the reproduction difficulties with photographs at the time, they made meticulously realistic drawings for their posters by enlarging film frame images via projection and a grid method. These three-dimensional illusions were contrasted with flat forms in dynamic, well-designed posters with strong graphic qualities. For this poster, for The Man with the Movie Camera from 1929, spatial dislocation is achieved by extreme perspective, circular type, and the fragmented figures. The Stenberg brothers' father was a Swede and their mother was a Russian. They were both born in Russia but remained Swedish citizens until 1933. They studied art at the Stroganov School of Applied Arts in Moscow from 1912 to 1917. They were established members of the Russian avant-garde by the early 1920s. Beginning in 1922, they designed sets and costumes for Alexander Turov's Moscow Chamber Theater. Georgy and Vladimir's intimate knowledge of avant-garde theater and set designs, a growing film industry with a supportive Bolshevik regime, factors that both work together to create a veritable perfect storm for innovative graphic movie poster art. For this film poster for the 11th year of the Revolution done in 1928, The images reflected in the workers' glasses illustrate the development of Soviet industry. The Stenberg brothers produced this clever poster for an American film that was showing in Russia in 1929. The General, starring Buster Keaton, was about a Civil War soldier who repeatedly crossed the front lines in a locomotive. The success of the Stenbergs' radical approach was facilitated by a number of factors: their talent as graphic designers and their knowledge of film theory, constructivism, suprematism, and the avant-garde theater. Though we have only looked at 4 of the Stenberg brothers' posters in this presentation, I would encourage you to search their complete body of work for inspiration and motivation for your next design project. Gustav Clustis was born in Russia in 1895. He was a pioneer in Russian photography and joined the Constructivist avant-garde. He moved to Moscow in 1918 and studied under Kazimir Malevich. He produced political art for the Soviet state during the 1920s. Using photo montage, Clustis designed this postcard to promote a large sporting event in 1928. Devoted to the utopian ideals that Constructivism was founded in, Clustis and his wife, Kulagina, continued to produce work for the state, though as the political climate changed, they found themselves under increased restrictions on what they could use for subject matter. This is a poster that Clustis produced in 1930 called "We Will Repay the Coal Debt for the Country." In 1930, Gustav created this "Everyone Must Vote in the Election Soviets" poster. The same montage was used for various campaigns by the state. Despite his loyal service to the Communist Party, Clustis was arrested in Moscow on January 17, 1938, and executed on Stalin's orders 6 weeks later. In the visual language of the constructivists, graphic artists constructed images, often from portions of photographs and pre-printed papers that had been created by others. But what they achieved through photo montage was a wholly new image. Constructivist design, centered in Moscow, thrived during the Russian revolutionary period of politics. By the 1930s, it was losing favor with Stalin's regime, and graphic artists who stayed in Russia suffered. Constructivism had spread to Western Europe, where it continued to impact graphic design.